Here to share her Korean-American story, please welcome Soo Hugh.
I paid for your seat at the table. You have to say that. Thank you, Vivian, and thank you, HJ and KAS, for this honor. When I look at this room and I look at all of you, I see what my parents could never have imagined when they first came to America in 1979. Korean Americans not just surviving, but authoring, not just translating, but creating the original text. Our text. Eric. My most recent show, Pachinko, almost didn't happen, and it's not because they didn't want to make it. Crazy enough, that was not the problem, but because of my fears. So instead, I told my agent that I was too busy finishing a show called The Terror, about 129 British Royal Navy seamen who got trapped in the Arctic to face their biggest fears. It's funny because so many of the things I write feature these indomitable characters, right? Characters who are forced to conquer their own terrors. And perhaps the reason why I'm so drawn to these characters is because for so long I was afraid to confront my fears. I was terrified of reading Pachinko, not because of the book itself, but what the story would have me face. My heritage, my past, my shame, and my pride. Shame and pride, the two sides of the same coin for so many of us. Shame and pride that my parents came to this country so loaded with so much but just their hopes and dreams, toiling 14 hours a day, 6 days a week while my brother and I raised ourselves on television. My daughters will love that. Allowing us to dream. Like so many of you, I grew up living between languages. At home, Korean filled the air, while in private, English demanded a precision that I did not yet possess. My parents spoke to me in a language I couldn't hear, and I answered in one they struggled to master. I grew up in a family separated by the very words meant to bring us together. I can't speak to my mother. She speaks Korean, I speak English. I want you guys to think about that. But here's what I learned in that space between languages. Silence, too, is a story. And stories, they raised me. At home, I was studying The Godfather, and I didn't even realize that it's really the story of a dysfunctional family, right? I learned humor from sitcom punchlines. I learned timing from commercial breaks. I learned that every story itself needs a monster, until I realized that sometimes the monster is the story itself. My parents' English was broken. That's what they called it. It was broken. As if my language was like glass. But my parents' language, their English, it built things. It built a business that opened at 6 a.m. every morning. It built parent-teacher conferences where my mother nodded when she didn't understand a word, and her pride stayed intact. It built the peculiar poetry of love, translated through gestures. A plate of fruit, cut fruit, perfectly cut fruit. We all know what that means, right? We all know. It appeared wordlessly at my desk, on my father's hand, on my shoulder, every time I got my report cards. And for years, I thought that my voice was supposed to be their voice. The 9-year-old me negotiating with her landlord. The 12-year-old me calling the insurance companies for them. I became fluent in something so much more complex than English or Korean. I became fluent in the grammar of gaps, the syntax of what goes unsaid between generations. When I finally read Pachinko, and my God, what a glorious book. But I knew I wasn't trying to adapt a great American novel, and it is. I don't say great American Korean novel, I say great American novel. I was trying to understand a very simple question. How do we carry history in our bodies when our history has no language? My grandparents' story came to me in fragments, in scars that never had stories, or my grandmother counting money in Japanese, the colonizer's language she could never forget. Here's what they don't tell you about being a Korean American showrunner in Hollywood. You become a professional translator, not of language, but of legitimacy. Every time you enter a room, you're proving that our stories deserve their time and their attention. Every pitch becomes an argument for existence, and it is exhausting. And yet, the miracle, and I choose that word very deliberately, miracle, is that these stories found their audience. I mean, I've made a fucking show about a woman who made kimchi. And millions saw their own grandmothers. That is a miracle. My mother, of course, she watched all my shows, but I can tell she never got them. You know, she would always used to say, "Why do your shows have to be so fucking scary?" She didn't say the fucking part. But when she saw Pachinko, she called me and she said, "This was the scariest show you ever made." And I get it. Approval from our parents, it's right, it's our eternal curse, right? Speaking of which, my daughters are here tonight. They're 10 and 12, and that's the age when you realize your parents are real people with histories that precede you, right? And that's really terrifying. And there's a question I dread hearing from them one day, and perhaps it will come and perhaps it won't. And the question is this: Mama, do I have to have a tragic immigrant story to be a real Korean American? What this question is really asking us is whether pain is the only currency that makes our stories valuable. So let me say this to my daughters, Zelda and Olympia, and to all the Korean Americans finding their voice out there. Your story does not have to be tragic to be true. You do not need to perform your difference for it to matter. The goal was never just to be heard. It was to make our telling both remarkable and ordinary. The word trailblazer suggests we're cutting through wilderness, but I prefer to think we're not just trailing trails, we are, but we're building roads. Trails disappear in the end. Roads invite company. Roads say this journey, it is repeatable. This path is meant for more than one person. And to my daughters, I don't know what stories you're going to end up telling. Maybe you will write about the future instead of the past. Maybe you'll tell stories that have nothing to do with being Korean, and that will be its own kind of victory. So tonight we tell not just stories that have been told, but stories yet to come. the most radical thing we can do is to keep telling ourselves that until then, that what we feel is both ordinary and remarkable. Until a Korean American story is simply an American story, a human story, needing no special justification, no trauma passport, no suffering credentials. But until then, we translate, we build roads, we accept awards with speeches that try to mean something in 6 minutes that our parents couldn't say in 60 years. And we fight. So thank you for this recognition. But most importantly, thank you for letting our stories matter.